Hey everyone, welcome to Massachusetts Sports Central. This is our NFL Power Rankings after Week 17 of the season. Just to remind everyone what these rankings are, this list represents how likely we think that each team will win Super Bowl 52. It is not an ordered list of the best teams necessarily. It also isn't a random list based on who beat who last week, so basically this list should be much less reactionary than many of these other types of power rankings. So this will be our last ranking of the regular season. We will continue to do them during the playoffs, but we'll only re-rank the remaining teams. Also, the 12 playoff teams are set, and those are going to be our top 12 teams because we're basing this on who can win the Super Bowl, and you got to be in it to win it. These are the only teams that can win the Super Bowl, so even though there are eliminated teams that might be better overall, they aren't doing anything this season. Okay, on to the rankings. Not shockingly, the 0-16 Browns stay at number 32. Not going to really say anything about them other than obviously they're god awful. They still couldn't beat the Steelers backups, which isn't too surprising. 0-16, very pathetic. Can't believe that they are saying they're going to stay with Hugh Jackson and his 1-32 over 1-31 over 2 years. Pathetic. Number 31, the New York Football Giants, also not moving. I considered moving them one slot, but they're still the second lowest, overall the second worst team by the standings. I don't think they have much going on. Maybe they could beat the Texans, maybe not. Number 30, moving down one slot, we do have the Texans. They do have one more win. I do think this is probably going to be one of the bigger bounce back teams next year. You never know. This is assuming people are healthy. Maybe Watson won't come back fully healthy. Maybe Watt is really done as being a full-time player. Some of the other stuff might not fall into place, but I don't think they're going to be this bad, even if they don't bounce back to be 10, 11, 12 win type team. I don't think they're going to be a bad 4-win team because they are not as good as their 4-win show right now. Number 29, moving down one slot, is moving up one slot is the Indianapolis Colts, who beat the aforementioned Texans. Now, they have a lot of bad wins this year, but, right now, obviously, they're better than the Texans because they beat the Texans. I do say it's not like a random list of who beat who, but, you have two teams in the same division, same record. One just beat the other one, actually swept them this year. It's kind of hard to not put them ahead. Moving into next year, even if Luck comes back, I still think the Texans will probably be a better team, but this is for this year, not for next year. Number 28, staying put, the Chicago Bears. They lost. They didn't look good in the loss. They're one of the worst teams in the NFC. Not too much else to say there. There's some promise for the future, but this year they're terrible. Speaking of terrible this year, number 27 also staying put, the Denver Broncos. They had Paxton Lynch play. It wasn't any worse than any of the other guys who've been playing this year. Maybe a little bit better. My guess is they might still be looking for a quarterback. Maybe not. Who knows? I do think Elway is hinting that they're going to be looking to upgrade the position, and Lynch is not necessarily going to be the answer. I think he'll probably stick around on the team, at least as the backup, and maybe he'll have a chance to compete, but I don't think that he is the default future plan. The defense still has some potential, but it is getting older. It's getting more expensive, and without an offense to at least give it a chance, this team is going to be in trouble unless they can fix the offense, which, again, obviously starts with quarterback. Number 26, the New York Jets, moving down 2 slots. So this team overachieved for the most part this season, but right now they actually probably could have been ranked a bit worse than this because with Bryce Petty, they are at best in the competition with these everybody but the Browns. They probably could have potentially been ranked below. But all those other teams have so many flaws. Who knows what would happen in a head-to-head game with them. So again, we'll see what happens next year. But this year, right now, 26 might be actually generous for them. All right, number 25. Team finishing just ahead of them in the standings in their division, the Miami Dolphins, moving down 2 slots. So they lost to the Bills. Not shocking. It was their last home game. Cutler was terrible this year. Hopefully they can bounce back and be a little bit closer to the 2016 season when they get Tannehill back. It's hard to think that Ryan Tannehill was like that big of a difference, but maybe he was. because this was not a good team this year. Even when they were winning, they weren't that good. Um, they had that one, their Super Bowl for the year when they really came out and played well against the Pats. But other than that, they just were mostly a disappointment this year. Number 24, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers moving up 2 slots with their win over the Saints. I'm not going to put a heck of a lot into it, but they were playing a lot better recently. They actually could potentially be, again, if the season was a few more games, maybe they could potentially rank a little bit higher than this because they did finish a little bit stronger. But overall, just a bad team who played bad this year. Hopefully for them, the progression that Winston was showing at the end of the year will carry over into next season. But, they're going to have to see. There's definitely a lot of issues in Tampa Bay. All right, number 23, moving down 1 slot, the Green Bay Packers. They lost their season finale, lost a few in a row to end the year. Rodgers was crap when he came back for that one game. Not too much to like in Green Bay right now. A lot of injuries, a lot of issues. Obviously, they're making some moves, moving on from Thompson as GM and finally getting rid of Don Capers as the defensive coordinator, which is certainly something people in Green Bay have been calling for years. We'll see what happens. Obviously, most of it, no matter what of any of this other stuff happens, the big thing is going to be if Rodgers comes back fully healthy next year. I do think that they just rushed him back and he was more rusty and just not fully healed. Give him another 6 months, he'll be fine, I think. You never know, but there's no reason to think that this kind of injury is going to substantially set him back moving forward in his career. All right, number 22, moving down 1 slot, the Oakland Raiders. Again, another team lost their season finale. Very disappointing this year. In retrospect, probably were overrating what they should have been able to do, but I don't think even more realistic expectations, i.e. not necessarily like a 13-win, AFC championship or better type team, which a lot of people were predicting them. But even I think more realistic, still thought they probably should have been like a 9-win team. And they just fell apart. Don't necessarily think Del Rio should have gotten canned because he's been pretty successful given what the Raiders have been like the past 15 years. But, I can see why they also would do it given the regression. Number 21, moving up 4 slots, the Cincinnati Bengals. Played really well their last 2 weeks, and especially in that game that they had absolutely nothing to play for, and the Ravens had everything to play for. They outplayed the Ravens most of the game, and then showed, some good gumption by being able to pull off that amazing last-second win after falling behind when they were leading most of the game. Still don't think this is a great team. I think that at best they're going to be stuck in this sort of middling 6 to 9 wins for a couple of years, never getting a great draft pick, but never doing much, at best sneaking in and doing their typical one and done. I think that that's their best case. More likely, they're probably going to head towards being quite a bit worse moving forward, is my guess. And somehow, they had talked about Marvin Lewis was going to be moving on, and somehow he apparently got a 2-year extension instead. Who knows what's going on there? It's crazy. All right, number 20, the Washington Redskins falling down 1 slot. Probably could have moved them down even farther given that they lost kind of pathetically to the Giants. The Giants didn't have anything to play for, neither did the Skins, so, who wanted it less, I guess. Thought Cousins would have played better since obviously this was his last audition for however huge of contract he's going to get this year, be it a ridiculous franchise tag from the Skins or a long-term deal from them or somebody else. They had a lot of injuries this year. If they can be healthy and keep Cousins or find a replacement, which is doubtful, they should be better than this next year. I don't think they're going to be a great team, but maybe top half instead of bottom, 20s. Number 19, the Arizona Cardinals. By the end of the year, so they moved up 1 slot. By the end of the year, their defense was actually pretty good. The offense was still decimated. But they continued to horrify the Seahawks, beating them in a game that by the time the game was actually over was already meaningless since the Falcons won a few minutes before. But for the most part, the Seahawks had everything to play for in this game because if they had won and the Falcons had faltered, then they would have made the playoffs. Also, I think they would have just enjoyed, even if they missed the playoffs, having another 10-win season, and winning at the end against a division rival to carry themselves into the offseason. But instead, they lost. They were still a winning team, but that was about as good as you can get. Cardinals, otherwise, I said their defense improved a lot by the end of the year. They get a healthy David Johnson back. That will help their offense a lot. But now they have a quarterback issue because Palmer just announced his retirement. So see what happens there. Not that Palmer was like an amazing quarterback, but he was very good and a heck of a lot better than Gabbert or Stanton. So they need to do something at quarterback. Maybe it's Kirk Cousins. Or something like that. If they do that, then obviously they will be a lot better. Number 18, the San Francisco 49ers moving up 3 slots. So again, these are power rankings, not standings. So they have a much worse record than there's a couple of teams right below them here. But they're hot. They're playing well. They have a good sign for the future. And they beat 2 playoff teams in consecutive weeks to end the season there. Or sorry, 3 playoff teams because they beat the Titans, the Jaguars, and the Rams. Now, the Rams are resting their starters, so you take that one with a grain of salt, but they still beat them. And, like we were saying with the Browns, they couldn't beat the Steelers and their backups, so there you go. I think this team has a lot to look forward to next year. Let's pump the brakes a little bit on them. People are talking about like they're going to be a Super Bowl contender. I don't know about that, but they certainly could be 500 or better, maybe even challenge for a wild card spot. But right now they're hot and they're playing well, and I think they actually probably could beat some of the teams that I still have ranked ahead of them. But for a team with this kind of record and how they started, this is a pretty good end of the year ranking for them. All right, number 17, staying put, the Detroit Lions. They did beat the decimated Packer team in their last game. Did end up 9-7. I don't necessarily. So it was like we said with some of the other things. I don't necessarily agree with them firing the coach, but depending on who they can bring in, I can see that as well. If they don't bring in a really good guy, one thing I heard was maybe McDaniels from the Pats. I could see that because I could see him doing great things with Stafford. If they don't bring somebody of that ilk in, then I don't really see the point in changing coaches. But we'll see. Number 16, also staying put, the Dallas Cowboys. They did beat the Eagles to finish the season, but it was not an impressive game with a 6-0 win. So they couldn't do much against the Eagles' defense, which would be the more important thing, especially in the cold weather. It wasn't even like they held Nick Foles scoreless. Yeah, he played a little bit and didn't play that well when he did, but for the most part, they were playing Nate Sudfeld. For as many people who are writing off the Eagles, if they with Nick Foles, there's no way in hell they're winning anything with Nate Sudfeld. So. Again, pump the brakes on that win. But the Cowboys still have a talented core overall, so they do have the potential of upsetting pretty much anybody on a weekly basis if things are clicking for them. It's just a lot of things weren't clicking for them this year. Number 15, falling down 3 slots, the Seattle Seahawks. Still had a winning record. They were the first team out on the playoffs. They still have some pieces. Let's see what happens next year. It seems like there's a good chance that at least part of the defense is going to get blown up. So this could be the end of an era there, but they also could bounce back because I don't think they're getting rid of all their star defensive guys, and they still have Wilson, and a franchise elite type QB like that can carry a team a bit. So all right, number 14, moving down 4 slots, the Baltimore Ravens. Now, I had them probably slightly overranked last week just because they seemingly had the easiest shot of making the playoffs of the 4 AFC teams that were challenging, and all the stuff that had to happen for them not to make it did, including them losing, which was the big one. It would be one thing, like, when we talk in a second about the Chargers, they won their game, they just didn't get the right help, including the Ravens losing. If they had won, that would have, no, it wouldn't have, because the Titans won. That was the killer for the Chargers. But anyway, the Ravens lost. They were the only of the 4 teams competing for those last 2 AFC spots. They're the only one who lost, so that's why they're last, even behind the other team that didn't make it. Still had a good defense. Probably would have been more dangerous than some of the teams that did make the playoffs if they had made it, but they didn't. So that's where they are. Number 13, not moving, the LA Chargers at number 13. So this is my first team out of the playoffs. Highest ranked out of the playoffs, that is. They won their game. They won it pretty easily. Finished strong the end of the year. Obviously, they finished 9-3 after the 0-4 start, so that's good there. Had a solid offense, had a good defense. Probably would have been one of the scarier wild card teams in the AFC if they had made it. So, again, that might have had them ranked higher than some of these other teams if they had actually made the playoffs, but they didn't, so they're not. We'll see where they go next year. Obviously, Rivers is getting older. Gates is probably gone, or if not gone, he's going to be even less effective moving forward. I still think they have plenty of pieces, and they if they can just stop being so chargery, they could be competitive next year. We'll see how it goes. Number 12, moving up 2 slots, the Tennessee Titans. They are actually the 5th seed, but I think that they are less likely to upset the Chiefs, in my opinion, than probably any other wildcard team is of winning their game. They were playing terribly coming into this last game, but they beat the Jags when they needed to. So, got to give them credit for that. And the 4 teams in the wild card round for the AFC are all fairly unimpressive. So, I think anything can happen, but I do think this is the weakest team of those 4 playing this week. And frankly, I would have them behind the Chargers and the Ravens. They were behind the Chargers and the Ravens coming into this week because I thought that they were the worst team contending for the playoffs. Anyway, so moving on. Number 11, the other AFC wildcard team, the Buffalo Bills, moving up 4 slots. I probably would have them behind the Titans if I knew exactly what was going on with Shady. Right now, they say he's day to day and he's going to play. If he's playing and, it's obviously not going to be 100%, but if he's like, 85, 90%, then this is the right ranking. If he's like 60% or less, or doesn't play at all, the Bills are not going to be as good as the Titans, just because McCoy is clearly their most important player, and he takes a lot of pressure off like Taylor to be able to do some of his stuff, because you have to respect the run game with him in there. Without him in there or being totally ineffective, the Bills have no shot. All right, number 10, falling down 2 slots, the Jacksonville Jaguars, the Bills' opponent. I think they are still a better team than the Bills. They have a better defense, but the Bills' defense is pretty good too. It is at home, which benefits them. I think if they had to go to Buffalo, then I would actually probably take the Bills. In Jacksonville, probably taking the Jags. The thing is, so they're on a 2-game losing streak. They didn't have anything to play in this game, so you can give them a little bit of a leeway there. But they did play the players, and they said they were trying to win. So, it's a little hard to tease all that out. But Blake Bortles has looked terrible. Was terrible in that game, and threw quite a few picks in the previous game, even though overall his stat line wasn't that bad. 5 picks in the last 2 games. Bortles better turn back into the guy who was actually a asset to the team the several weeks before that. Because if he Bortles it like this, they could easily lose to the Bills, and there's no way in hell they're going to beat the Steelers in the next round if they do win their first game. All right, number 9, the Carolina Panthers, moving down 2 slots. Again, they actually had plenty to play for. If they had won that game, they would have won the division because the Saints lost. They would have just missed getting on the bye. Everything that happened for them to get a bye worked except for the Vikings losing. So they would have been the 3 seed if they had won. Instead, they're the 5th seed. So that they had plenty to play for. They didn't play that well. Bad Cam showed up again. If Bad Cam shows up at any point in the playoffs, they're going to lose. Just, if he shows up and when it happens. So if Bad Cam is there in the wild card round, they lose the wild card game. If he shows, if Good Cam shows up then, but Bad Cam shows up in one of the subsequent games, pretty much the only chance the Panthers have is for Good Cam to show up at least 4 times, and that still doesn't guarantee they're going to win, but that they at least have a chance. I think Bad Cam is going to show up at some point. Like I said, maybe not this week, but sometime in the next couple of weeks. All right. Number 8, moving up 3 slots, the Atlanta Falcons. Even though they are behind the Panthers, and I think that they have a very tough game against the Rams, they did just beat the Panthers, so obviously I put a little bit of weight on that. I also just think that they are a little bit more consistent at this point. They are definitely inconsistent and not as dynamic as they used to be, but I think that they can get some stuff done, and they're not bad. Um, you could still flip flop those two, but this is what I'm going with. They are the defending conference champions. They do have the defending MVP. Matt Ryan is more consistent than Cam Newton, so that's kind of where I am with that. Number 7, moving up 2 slots, the Kansas City Chiefs. This is partially because I think they probably have the easiest draw for the playoffs, so I think that I have a hard time seeing them losing to the Titans. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. Who knows? But they have been playing much better of late. Their backups beat Denver. Mahomes got a little bit of game actions, so that's, even though I'm not as high on how he played as some people are, he didn't play badly, and now he does have some real game reps in case God forbid he actually does have to play this year in the playoffs. So I do think that is a benefit in and of itself. I think over the past couple of weeks, so a while ago I was saying that you kind of had a 3-tiered sort of AFC where you had the Pats and Steelers, then you had the Jags, then you kind of had everybody else. Now I kind of think the Chiefs and Jags are much closer to each other. Chiefs might actually be the next best team at this point. But it's hard to say. The Jags still have a super defense despite hemorrhaging points a couple weeks ago, but things are a lot more interesting in the second tier of the AFC than it was a couple weeks ago. All right, number 6, staying put, the New Orleans Saints. They lost to Tampa, and they were trying to win it, so that's a little disturbing for them. But Tampa had been playing well. They gave the Falcons and the Panthers all they could handle the previous 2 weeks. So in this case, the only real difference was that they actually were able to pull out the win instead of crapping it away at the very end like they did, like against the Panthers the previous week. Saints are still strong. They're going to host a playoff game. They're going to be hard to beat at the Dome there. But the problem is, moving forward, if they win, then they're going to be playing at the Eagles. You could say whatever you want about what's going on with the Eagles right now, but if the Saints are going up there and it's like 10 degrees and snow on the ground, they are not going to like that. And even though their defense is a lot better, which is the, quote unquote, that's the thing that travels well, the offense is going to struggle, I think, because the Eagles defense is also pretty good. So I do think that they will likely win their wild card game. I'm going to examine that a little bit closer before I do my official game picks, but I would probably be picking them. But moving forward, I'm not sure how well built they are to play after that. All right, number 5, the Eagles falling down 2 slots. They lost their game, and it's hard to tell what's going on with, Foles had a good first game, but since then has not played that well, and then didn't play, surprisingly to me, did not play that much in this other game. Obviously, if he got hurt, they would have a big problem because, as I said earlier, Nate Sudfeld wasn't bringing them nowhere. But at the same time, I kind of thought he was going to play more to get more acclimated to game situations with the first team, especially given that maybe if they were going to be playing in the wild card round, but given that they have a bye, even if he got banged up a little, anything short of a season-ending injury, even if he got banged up a little bit, he would have had that full week to rest anyway. So I don't necessarily agree with that decision. But as we just said with the Saints, who is their most likely opponent, they're the only outdoor cold weather team in the NFC playoffs, so the fact that they host whatever games they play is a big advantage for them. You have multiple dome teams. So their other 2 options would be Carolina, which is a warm weather team, and Atlanta, who is a warm weather dome team as well. So, at least like if they play Minnesota in the NFC Championship game, Minnesota at least can not have to travel to weird places to be able to practice outside in the cold. They just have to, go to one of the local colleges or something like that and practice outside to prepare for that game. I guess they probably have an outdoor practice facility too. I don't know those ins and outs per se. Anyway, I think the Eagles' demise is being written off a little too soon. I don't think that they are as strong as they were with Wentz, obviously, but I don't think that they're an obvious one and done team either. All right, number 4, moving up one slot, the LA Rams. Even though they lost, but they lost with their backups, unlike the Saints. And I do think that fully healthy, which they mostly are, aside from their kicker, which could come into play, they are probably more equipped to win than the Eagles. They also would go to the Rams, which I'm sorry. If they win, they would be going to the Vikings, which obviously that's not the team you're really going to be excited to face, but condition wise, they'll be playing in a dome, which is a lot more conducive to them being able to play their game than if they had to go to play the Eagles outside in cold, crappy weather in Philly. Only giving that a slight bump, but a little bit there. Number 3, the Pittsburgh Steelers moving up one slot. It's really, again, looking like it's probably a 2-team race for the AFC. Collision course with the Pats in the AFC Championship game seems likely. Obviously, anything can happen to either of these teams, but I think either of them losing to any of the teams that they might face in the division round would be a pretty serious upset. Again, unlike the NFC, where you are likely going to have 2 very strong teams coming out of the wild card round to play 2 very strong teams in the division round. So again, it looks like for the most part, the Steelers just have to overcome the Patriots, which not that that's a small task, but that's just one thing that they have to do without screwing up to get to the Super Bowl, which is not the case for any of the NFC teams. That being said, number 2, staying put, the Minnesota Vikings. I just think they are actually the second best team. I think they're a better team than the Steelers. Not by a lot, but a little bit. They have a superb defense. They have, a good offense. Keenum has, people are still waiting for Keenum to turn back into a pumpkin. He hasn't yet. If he does in the playoffs, then they're screwed. But if he keeps playing the way he has been, there's no reason to think that their offense is going to be a major issue. And with that defense, they can certainly beat anybody. And obviously, their first game is going to be at home. And if the Eagles do go one and done, then they're going to host the NFC Championship. And even if it is against a warm weather or other dome team, that's still going to be a big advantage for them. Okay. And number 1, no shock here. Number 1 seed in the AFC, tied for the best record in the league. Right where they started the beginning of the year, and we'll see what happens moving forward. It's the New England Patriots. They have plenty of issues, so there's no, they're not anointed like it looked like they might have been to start the season, but still a good team, still have a lot of strengths, but definitely have some weaknesses. The bye will be very good for them. There is rumors that some guys who have been hurt will be able to be back in the division round. That'll be good. But the thing is, again, there's no particular obviously the Chiefs had played them well in a couple of regular season games here or there. Some matchups are good for them. But really in that first game, the big matchup was Barry on Gronk. Barry's out for the year, so that's a big thing. Plus, Kareem Hunt came out of nowhere. He's not a surprise anymore. So I'm not overly worried for the Patriots' chances against the Chiefs. I do think that is probably the one team that could give them a game. I don't think if either of the wild card teams, either the Titans or the Bills, win, I don't think that either of them can realistically run with the Pats at Foxborough. The only thing the Bills have going for them is the cold weather's not going to bother them. But other than that, there's no reason to think either of those teams could compete. And like I said, I'm not overly worried about the Chiefs either. Especially the whole James Harrison thing. So they were saying, intel on the Steelers. While I believe that certainly could come up if they do play again, I honestly believe that Belichick, that was not the first and foremost thing, and I don't think that they've spent a lot of time talking to him about that stuff yet. But besides the fact he actually contributed quite a bit in that Jets game to end the season, he is really, really good against the Chiefs, and he always dominates Eric Fisher. And, I mean, the one good game he had with the Steelers this year was against the Chiefs. So I could actually, if they were picking it up essentially for one game, I actually think that's the more likely game than a game against the Steelers down the road. Like I said, obviously that will come up if they do play each other in the AFC Championship game, but I think that that might have actually been more of a Chiefs pickup than a Steelers pickup. All right, anyway, so Like I said, we will continue doing these in the playoffs, but we're only going to rank these top 12 teams and then obviously 8 teams and 4 teams moving forward. All right, thanks for watching, and please like, comment, and share the videos and subscribe to our channel. You can also follow us on other social media. Facebook and Twitter are both at MA Sports Central. Thanks, and we will see you soon.